Sorry, John. I'm going to open the hearing on House Bill 1203 and recognize the sponsor, Mr. Cahill, to speak to his bill.
Thank you very much, Senator. I am Michael Cahill. I represent the towns of Newfields and Newmarket in Rockingham 10. And House Bill 1203 remedies a problem that I think few people know about. I mean, I'm not directly involved in really game casinos or in charities other than making a donation now and then. So I had no idea that the charity gaming rooms were charging rent to the charities. It just seems contrary to what the goal was, the pretext of allowing the gaming to happen was that it would benefit charities and then to charge the charities rent. So that's why I brought this bill forward, and it did pass the House on consent, and I hope it will do the same in your chamber.
Thank you very much, Representative Cahill. Any questions for Representative Cahill? Seeing none. Thank you, Representative Cahill. Appreciate it. Alyssa? I always forget how to say your name. I apologize.
That's okay, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Alyssa Margolin. I'm here this morning representing the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits. We're the statewide association for New Hampshire's nonprofit sector, speaking in support of this legislation. Our organization supports the repeal of rents charged to sponsoring charities. While we can understand the history behind this, as has been noted in the current Gaming Commission, gaming has changed quite a bit. The landscape of gaming has changed quite a bit in New Hampshire. And at one point, what may have started in basements has now morphed into larger scale operations. I can understand initial investments in infrastructure, but revenues show that that is no longer needed. And sponsoring charities overall in the last 10 years have lost a significant percentage of revenues, while the overall revenue going to the charitable sector has increased in dollar amounts. The percentage of the overall yield of revenue is declined 10%. And we appreciate the discussion that's happened around trying to improve the landscape for both the sponsoring charities and the participants of gaming. But with that, I would just say we support rent repeal. There has been some stories of a very uneven landscape. Some charities being charged a very low amount, while others being charged up to 50% of the revenues made by sponsoring gaming. And because of that, and because of the evolution of gaming, we do support full rent repeal. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Rick Newman, the Hampshire Charitable Gaming Operators Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick Newman, New Hampshire Charitable Gaming Operators Association. We're here in support of the bill. I just want to quickly let the committee know where this originated. Charitable gaming, as we know, it started in 2006 with a $2 maximum bet. It wasn't until 2018 when the maximum bet went to $10, and we now have a maximum bet of $50. Our association believes that it was the right thing to do during the first 10, 12 years to have the ability to charge rent because it kept the rooms alive and meant charities were partnering with the rooms and charities made money from charity gaming. We agree that no longer is it necessary, so we're here in support of the legislation.
Great. Questions for Rick?
Thank you. Good morning, Rick. Do you know if all of the facilities are charging rents currently? Ms. Margolin said it was an uneven landscape, but just curious.
I can't say for today, but I will say yes, in 2023, I believe all the rooms were charging some kind of rent. I think there are perhaps some, knowing that this bill was likely to pass, have started to transition away from it already.
Okay. Any further questions? Seeing none.
Thank you, Rick.
Would anybody else like to testify on House Bill 1203? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on House Bill 1203. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session. It's been moved by Senator Roosevelt, seconded by Senator D'Alessandro to go into executive session. I'd move ought to pass. Moved by Senator Lang, ought to pass on Senate Bill 1203, seconded by Senator Rosenwald. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of an ought to pass motion signify by saying aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 1203 will adopt, and I'll take it out, make it easy. We can't move it on consent, but it should be and there'll be no fight on the floor, so. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to come out of executive session. It's been moved and seconded to come out of executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are at executive session and in recess for until 9:45. And I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session. It's been moved by Senator Roosevelt, seconded by Senator D'Alessandro to go into executive session. So Senate Bill 586 is our last Senate bill we'd like to exec and get out of committee. As the committee members may know, this was the Odd Fellows bill. So as written, I had one issue with the bill, and it was on line 4, the shall verse in there. So I'd be inclined to pass it if it was a may that leaves it as a local option for the community and says the community, if it wants to, could give it, that the Odd Fellows Home would qualify for an exemption, but leave it on their plate. Or I could easily, if we want to leave it as shall, I'd be easily okay with an ITL as well. So I want to just have discussion and see what we think.
What's the necessity of the bill? If we supplement may versus shall, they already have this authority. If the locals have this authority now, we're just superimposing something else.
So my understanding, and I could be wrong, was that some because it's not a 50C3, some municipalities are reading that to mean that they're not entitled, even though they're a charitable organization. And the idea being that this would be explicit, saying that this organization does qualify for this exemption, but it's still up to you whether you want to grant it. But it makes it clear that they're entitled to an exemption if the town wants to grant it versus leave it as a legal ambiguity.
Well, if it provides clarity, I mean, I'd substitute may for shall, but it seems to me that the individual community now has the authority to do this. People apply for these all the time. They apply for abatements and apply for a status where we don't have to pay the tax. We get all kinds of things on the books now. And this is, I
Senator Rosenwald?
don't know why someone would, I don't know why we would be playing around with this, with the,
Well, I think if you remember the testimony from Patrick, I don't remember his last name. The testimony from Patrick was that some municipalities, it's being applied unevenly. Some municipalities are saying, yes, we agree that you're entitled to it and we're granting it. And the other ones are saying, we don't think you're entitled to it and therefore we're not granting it. And this would just provide clarity for the organization to be able to point to a statute and say, no, we're entitled to it if you want to give it to us. So it clears up that ambiguity.
But I think anything that clears up ambiguity is probably a good thing to do. It seems to me that this has been around forever. People have been negotiating these kinds of things forever. If this clarifies it, fine. I'm fine with substituting may for shall and moving it forward. I just don't think
Senator
it's
Rosenwald?
needed.
So I'm looking back through the hearing report, and there was a lot of discussion and questions about how it would impact other fraternal organizations, and that it might be opening a bigger subject. I'd be more inclined to go with an interim study. I know Senator Gendro had brought an amendment that changed international to national.
Yeah.
We've talked about going from shall to may. I just feel like maybe it's more impactful than we think it might be.
Would you like to make that motion?
I would like to make the motion of send to interim study
I would second it.
All right.
on
So
Senate Bill.
we're talking about the October's bill. So Senate Bill 586. It's been moved by Senator Rosenwald to go to interim study. It's been seconded by Senator D'Alessandro. Is there any further discussion on this bill? Hearing none, all those in favor of interim study signify by saying aye.
Okay.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it 4-0. Interim study, we can't put it on consent because we're short of members, so. Cindy, would you like to take it
Yeah,
out?
that,
So Senator Rosenwald will take it out.
Great.
And entertain a motion to go out of executive
So
session.
moved.
Been moved by Senator D'Alessandro, second by Senator Rosenwald, to come out of executive session. We are out of executive session. We are now going to open a public hearing on House Bill 1525. Let me see who the sponsor is. And neither Representative Doucette nor Representative or Senator Abbas are here. Keith, would you mind just introducing it?
Mr. Chairman, it's my pleasure to introduce House Bill 1525 relative to historic horse racing.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody here to, do we have a sheet on it? No one signed up. Great.
Right. So it must be an important piece of legislation.
So, Bob, we're going to have somebody here to explain the bill to us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick Newman, New Hampshire Charitable Gaming Operators Association. I just wanted to, for the committee's information, this bill is sort of identical to Senate Bill 472 that you've already passed through the Senate twice, except that this bill makes the moratorium permanent or indefinite, and Senate Bill 472 had a 7-year extension. So we support Senate Bill 472. We'll be working to pass that in the House. I just wanted the committee to be aware that that's the situation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wants to testify on House Bill 1525? Seeing none, I'm going to close. You have something, Lou?
No.
I'm going to close the public hearing on House Bill 1525, and we are on recess until 10 o'clock. rather rude to introduce, it's rather rude to bring a bill forward. Forward and not show up.
Right, right.
Or send somebody.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, isn't Doucette around? He's usually around. Yeah, I don't know about him.
House Bill 1549. Senator Murphy, would you do the honors of introducing the bill?
Mr. Chairman, it's my pleasure to introduce House Bill 1549, which is an act relative to buy-in amount for deductions collected during the operation of games of chance.
Great. Thank you, and I'm going to recognize Mr. Newman to come and explain the bills to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick Newman from the New Hampshire Charitable Gaming Operators Association. Excuse me, here in support of the bill. This bill is relatively simple. The current law mandates that game operators must deduct or rake a minimum of 20% from the buy-in amounts paid by players into tournaments. That money is then split between the charity and the game operator. The charity gets 35% of it. Game operator gets the balance. The tax that's due to the state is paid by the game operator from their share. This bill would cap that rake at 20% or $250, whichever is less. Now, the reason for this is very simple. Last year, you raised the maximum buy-in amount to $2,500. So if you were to have a $2,500 tournament, the mandate of 20% means each player's buy-in, of $2,500, $500 would come out to be split between the charity and the game operator. Most players would balk at that. Most players would think that's too much of a rake. So we would never get those big tournaments off the ground. Surrounding states that have poker tournaments do not rake that amount of money. They typically are going to rake on a $2,000 tournament, they're going to rake somewhere around $250, $300 tops. So this bill would make us competitive with the surrounding states. Poker players do travel. So it would not be unusual for somebody from New York or Connecticut or whatever to come to New Hampshire if there were a big poker tournament opportunity. And I will tell you that currently, as of today, the largest buy-in tournament we've had in any room in the state is $500. So we're not getting the big buy-in tournaments. We're hoping that this bill will allow rooms to consider offering. It wouldn't be something that would happen weekly, but a special event, a New Year's Eve 2-day tournament or something like that, where you might have a big tournament and attract new players from New England to come to New Hampshire.
Questions from the committee? And the reason for this bill is, again, because last year we raised the stakes and the tournament buy-in levels, and that made it now competitively disadvantaged to us based on this current law, and that's why it needs to be changed.
That's correct. The previous limit was $250. It's now at $250, the maximum rate was $50.
Right.
Right. Now we're looking at a maximum rate of $500. Players are telling us we'd never do that. We wouldn't participate in those tournaments.
Questions?
So
First of all, thank you for your testimony. When does the point come when we stop raising the limit?
We probably, for tournaments, are probably there, Senator. Frankly, I don't see, even in Foxwoods and those kinds of places, you really don't see the $10,000 tournaments that you see in Vegas. I think for tournament play, we're probably at the limit that New Hampshire could even consider.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
So while we're in the public hearing part, I've distributed an amendment to everybody. This amendment allows an add-on to the buy-in, with the add-on going 100% to the dealers or the dealer tip pool in the tournament. As Senator D'Alessandro was talking about a minute ago, we have this, the chips have no value. And so flipping a chip to a dealer, it's still subject to the 35% rake, 35% to the charities. And so now the dealer's are getting less of a tip, even though the player is giving them a tip. So what this bill, what the amendment does is allow for at the time of buy-in. So again, if we're doing a $100 tournament, buy-in tournament, I can go buy my chips for $100 and I can say, hey, here's an additional $25 I want to go to the dealers. And it will allow them to do that, would take it out of the subject of the $100, which is the taxable piece, and make it an untaxable piece that goes directly to the dealer. 100% of that, no operator take out of that $25, but 100% of that tip goes to the dealers to do that. So it just makes it easier for the dealers, makes it so they can find dealers that'll be interested in dealing these games, because there's now a better tipping mechanism to be able to allow that to happen.
Ask a question.
That's why I have Rick here, so he
The
can.
functioning of this. Well, two questions, really. I mean, if the chips have no value, how do they somehow achieve value for the dealer?
Well, it isn't so much that the chips would have value, it would be, so I buy in for $100, let's say, and I get 5,000 chips to play in the tournament. So each of us in this room buy in for $100. The operator might offer an incentive. If you'll give us $10 toward the dealer, we'll give you an extra 500 chips. That's the way that works. But currently, players will do that. So they give the $10. But currently, the charity gets 35% of the $10. And the state gets 3% of the $10. So the dealer ends up only getting $6.20 when I intended as a player to tip the dealer $10. This amendment that Senator Lang's talking about would mean my tip, which I'm giving, is going to 100% go to the dealer. And as he said, just so you understand, when you get a tournament, so you start out with a tournament with 10 tables, you've got 10 dealers. Now, that tournament goes on for hours. It can take 5, 6, 7 hours to get through the tournament. And as players get knocked out, dealers drop off. But it does get more and more difficult to get a dealer to want to deal a tournament play, because if I'm dealing a cash poker table, I'm going to make a lot more money in tips. Because pretty much at every hand, the winner is tipping the dealer. Whereas in a tournament, it's really at the end of the tournament where the winners, the 4 or 5 prize winners, might chip in some money. This gives incentive for the rank and file player to say, here's a little tip for the dealer.
Well, I understand that, but the chips have no value. So if you're giving the dealer a chip,
I get your point, Senator. Let me try to clarify. You don't actually give the dealer the chip. You're going to give $10,
okay.
and the $10 is going to go to the dealer.
Okay. I have a second question. The tip that you're giving to the dealer is in addition to the 250 maximum, or is it coming?
No, in addition.
Okay.
So the charity's still going to get their full share. It's just that then you're going to give an extra $10 or $20 to the dealer.
Got it. Thank you.
Further questions?
No, just a
Okay.
grammatical.
Grammatical, we can take care of that when we decide to kick the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick. Is there anybody else here to wish to speak on House Bill 1549?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, Alyssa Margolin here representing the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits. We did not have the opportunity to review the amendment, and since it would essentially cut into a small, albeit a small amount of revenue for dedicated for the charitable sector, I wonder if we could ask you not to exec the bill and provide feedback on the amendment through our policy committee. We now have a policy committee formed around charitable gaming. I will say in general to remind, we are the sponsoring entities of gaming in the state. Obviously, we want to see folks who want to accept gratuity to be able to accept gratuity. It seems like there might be also an opportunity to get a chance to give extra to the charity sponsoring gaming for that evening, that might be a good compromise. But I haven't had chance to run the proposal by the policy committee. I would appreciate that opportunity.
So
Thank
we're
you.
not going to exec it today, but I think you misunderstand the bill, right?
Okay.
So again, the charity sees no loss by allowing this amendment in. There's $0 difference to the charity. This is on top of what the charities get. So again, that rake is what the charities get, the 35% of the rake. So the rake piece is relative to you, but the gratuity piece is on top of that and outside the charitable breakage or percentages, I should say, not breakage. It's a whole different discussion, but outside the percentages. So so just understand. I just want to make sure you're clear the tipping piece. When we decide, if a player decides to give $20 to the dealer outside of the buy-in, that has no impact to the charity whatsoever, but it does allow that 100% of the gratuity that was intended to go directly to the dealer.
That would now, if gratuity was offered, be 35% would go to the charity and
Correct.
3% to the state. So it is
Well, that's the way it
arguably
is now.
clarifying a gratuity situation, but also, changing in a small way what is currently allowed to go to the charities, right?
So it doesn't change current law, other than the amount, the rate part. So it doesn't change that. Again, the amendment, what the amendment does is strictly if a player chooses to do an add-on, which is, again, outside of the current law. It's a new law that says if you give it gratuity, it goes 100% to the person you're intended a gratuity to go to. Whereas currently, if they give a gratuity, the state takes a piece of that, the operator takes a piece of that, the charity takes a piece of
Sponsored
that. They're
charities,
trying to
right.
not have that happen.
Right.
And trying to have this additional function. So that's what the bill does. It intends to correct that amendment intends to correct that problem so that the state's not taking a piece of the gratuity that was intended for the dealer, and the charity's not taking a piece of the gratuity that was intended for the dealer. The dealers are getting 100% of the gratuity, and yet it has no financial impact to the charity.
Yeah, I fully understand the intent of the bill. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to review. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
All right, any further discussion on House Bill 1549? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on House Bill 1549. And we'll go, under the time, and I have 2 more minutes. We'll be in recess for 2 minutes. So 4 committee members, just a general discussion.
I can't think of a place I'd rather be. Chairman Lang, esteemed members, for the record, my name's, I represent Mark McConkey. I represent the good people of Carroll County District 8. I'm here before you on House Bill 1631, The longest title, establishing commission to study revenue alternatives to the road toll registration charges, revenue alternatives to vehicle registration fees, and fund highway and bridge improvements. This commission has been in existence for the last couple of years. The problem always is it has had a one-year term. And by the time the governor gets runs through the process, we end up with a short window of 3 or 4 months to discuss this. This past year, or this year, when we were doing this work, we made tremendous progress, meeting every couple weeks, and we've been able to keep together the same group of stakeholders: Department of Environmental Services, Department of Transportation. Senator Chanley's been a wonderful member with us. Most of the work has come through the Public Works and Highways. We've had national consultants come in working with us at 0 fees. As you know, and I'll be brief, the revenue that we are receiving from the federal government and from the state mostly is derived from the amount of gasoline our residents and people coming to the state purchase. With much more fuel efficient vehicles, that's less revenue that's coming to us, and our needs grow. Nationally, it looks like we're going to end up going to some sort of vehicle miles traveled. We were hoping the federal government was going to get there before we had to address this. But we're looking at several models, of course, taking into concerns of privacy and so many other things. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I can tell you of all the commissions, except maybe one that Senator Lou and I have served on, this is probably my favorite. We are actually getting a lot of work done and a lot of buy-in. The speaker, who is no fan of commissions, recognizes the need for this. And with that, I would be happy to take questions.
Thank you for your testimony, and it sounds like you're channeling your inner Norm Major, who was a champion of this. Senator Roosevelt.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So a couple questions. On line 10 of page 1, you refer to 6 members from the House.
Yes.
And then in that paragraph, I can only find 4 members listed, unless my math is worse than I always think. There are 2 from Public Works, 1 from STE, and 1 from Ways and Means.
That would, on the surface, you would appear to be correct, madam.
So perhaps this, could I follow on? Mr. Chair?
Good.
Thank you. So maybe this was done during the House process of amending it, but I'm also wondering, since of the 6 tasks, 5 of them have to do with revenues, whether there might not be a second member from Ways and Means, either in the House or the Senate. I mean, 6 to 1 is a pretty House-heavy ratio, but I'm wondering if it's supposed to be 4, whether 2 of them, whether there just might be another member of Ways and Means, and maybe it's a Senate member.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. The commission has been very successful by having science and technology there, Ways and Means there, and they have been totally engaged as DES and everyone else. Public Works and Highways has more membership because we've been dealing historically with the issue. As to the number of 6 not being 4, you very well may be right, but I'd have to take a look at that and if that needs to be amended. We have had great success with Ways and Means, and I don't know that we would need a second or if they want to join.
President Rosal, I think the reason being is that somewhere we had an administrative rule change or a law change that talked about the number of legislative members has to be equal to or greater than a majority of the commission. And based on that, they have 7 other members, they need at least 7 legislators to be on it or more. So I think it probably got changed for that reason, to give it an equal number of legislators as compared to additional members. So that meets that administrative criteria. But you're right, in the definition, we don't identify who the 2 other members are.
Well, if I could follow up, I mean, line 9 does exempt the commission makeup from that statutory requirement because it has the notwithstanding.
Notwithstanding.
So,
So we can adjust that to 4 in the committee.
okay. And I do have another question. As long as we're talking about the commission makeup. I notice you don't have anyone from the trucking industry, the motor transports. You have car dealers, but I just wondered whether that was a voice that has historically not wanted to have input, or you've managed to get their perspective in another way, or whether, whatever. I'm curious.
Thank you. The trucking industry has been in the room with us through all of these meetings. And I believe their representation, they're certainly being heard.
Question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Brother Cokie. I think 2 things have become evident. We have problems with the highway fund, and they're exacerbating as we speak. I looked at some of the legislation that deals with fees. Some of those fees were constituted in 1953 and adjusted in 1978. Is that part of your study, to look at those and see what kind of a change could be made there?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Representative Mills, who's Public Works also, when we came into the commission this year, made sure that all past legislation to adjust fees and registrations and everything else was all brought into and kept in this body and distributed. And those hard choices are certainly coming up, and I fully expect we're going to address that.
Great, thank you. Further questions? And our bill with regard to the loan we took from the federal government with regard to paving, we know that there's a time when we have to begin paying not only the interest, but the principal and interest. And we also know that the gas tax increase that we put together sunsets. What are we looking at as far as that's the impact of that on our ability to maintain our roads?
Thank you.
In a reasonable fashion.
Yep. Thank you, Senator, once again. We have, as you're very aware of, we have a number of at least 500 miles of repaving every year just to keep our main and secondary roads in a condition. And through the process that you're talking about, which is about to sunset, in the very creative federal formula that the Senate had brought forward, we were able to just pay the interest for 15 years. And 15 years ago, sitting here or across the way, I thought this day would never come because it was so far out, but the day has come. And we're hoping to come out of this commission with recommendations. And I can remember the last time that this was brought forward to increase 4 cents. I and all members of Public Works were were put on the, with wanted signs posted everywhere. But we got through that. We were brave, and I think I know we're going to have to do that again.
Further question? And with regard to tolls, and this would really gets me. We've eliminated 3 tolls on the Everett Turnpike. We also built a bridge that cost us $1 billion a year in lost revenue. Are we going to look at that structure and to see what's going on there? Because if this, I drive the roads every day, as everybody in this room does. And our ability to keep up with maintenance, I think, has been severely diminished. And as a result of that, the gateway to New Hampshire is the quality roads that we offer, the quality transportation. If that's not maintained, what kind of a negative effect will that have on our tourist industry? I mean, all of those, in my opinion, have to be looked at. And in the plan, in the highway plan, I'm looking at exit 6 and 7 in Manchester, which are about $150 million cost. And the number of accidents that have taken place there, they take place really almost on a daily basis. That correction's been on the books for a long period of time, and the only way that can be taken care of is looking at the toll structure. I know how difficult that is, but indeed, if something doesn't happen, where are we going? Is that part of the thought process that's going on?
Yeah, Senator, again, yes. I will say that a quick story. One of our members in Public Works remembers when he was a child that when they would travel back to Massachusetts, father would say miles before they entered into Massachusetts, close your eyes and tell me when you move into Massachusetts. And the kids could always tell by the condition and the bump of the road. So the hallmark of our highway system in the state of New Hampshire has been the turnpike system. It has been self-funded. All improvements, monies go back to it in the tolls. And we were doing extremely well, until the removal of the Merrimack tolls, 3 being gone. I think it was a total of 4. And just the reaction of pulling those was a $2.5 million expense. We're losing millions of dollars in revenue, and we're still holding on to a piece of road, Continental Boulevard, which is costing us tens of thousands of dollars every year. We're going to fight that battle this week on the floor. And until we can stop that leakage out of the turnpike system, I fear the exact same thing you do, that first-class network, number one, is going to be diminished but we're not going to get improvements as you talk about Exit 6 and others. And again, it's going to take all of us, both our parties, standing tall, because the people want good roads, and I hope to be here and to be part of that process.
Thank you. Just one further question. And the electronic vehicles, what are we going to face up to? Now, we did address that to some extent with the additional charge, but when are we going to face up to that situation and properly maybe follow what our old chair of Ways and Means predicted for years and years? I mean, it seems to me we've got to enter into the new world. We've been in the old world for such a long period of time. If we don't enter into the new world, our DOT is going to fall apart. And we did a $50 million appropriation to DOT in the last budget. They've got a surplus now, but it's really a phony surplus because they can't hire anybody. And as a result of that, you got unfilled positions and you're rolling them over, and that's how you're creating the surplus. So all of these things, I mean, truly going to be looked at, because I think it's so important that the report be not only factual but realistic in terms of where we have to go.
Thank you. The commission on this revamp of the commission here is a 2-year term instead of a 1-year term. It is the intent that if this bill comes through the Senate in favor and heads to the governor, before we get there, we're going to go ad hoc committee out of Public Works and Highways. And the partners, once everyone knows it's going to happen again, the partners are going to be convened through Public Works. And we're going to start within 30 days of it passing, so that when the governor signs this, then we stay and keep that energy going forward. As far as EV, I believe that was the beginning of the question. The registration fee that's been put on the vehicles this year is going to be a boost, but it certainly isn't the final answer here. And many of the other states, including Hawaii throughout the country, are really trying to move to a combination of registration and then miles traveled. And we have to get there.
Sure. Well, I appreciate the great work you've done and your commitment. Indeed, big problems that have to be solved.
It's huge.
Huge problems. But thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
I
service.
just have one question. This is a repeal, this is basically renewing or reenacting an existing commission. Is there any language change in this bill as compared to what was in the previous law?
I believe there was brought into this, we merged in a request for a House bill that came in that was just wanted to discuss how revenue from car registrations is distributed, and we're going to include that in here. Other than that, everything else remains the same.
Further questions? And by the way, Senator D'Alessandro, I think that electric vehicle registration bill died in the House.
We had it.
Didn't
trying to
we
remember.
put it in House Bill 2?
Yeah, we did.
Oh, we put it in the House bill too?
Yeah.
We did.
I remember looking up and it was inexpedient to
We
legislate.
did two things. So we do have a little bit.
That was a $100 bill. I think it was $100, $100 we ended up with. So, all right. Anything else for Representative McConkey? Seeing none. Thank you, sir, for coming in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I were to close my eyes and think back, I'm sitting in front of many of my old House members. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on House Bill 1631? Saying, oh, come on up, just introduce yourself. Just hit the microphone.
Right. I'm Becky Oler with the Department of Environmental Services. Sorry, I signed in, but didn't indicate I wanted to speak. But after just listening to the conversation, I want to make it, just lend our support to this bill. This is an issue that obviously from our end, we are all in on encouraging adoption of electric vehicles and highly efficient vehicles. But for all the reasons that were discussed before, they have the potential to harm, the quality of New Hampshire roadways. And so we look forward to being part of the conversation. Again, it's something that all the states are struggling with. We're on many work groups that this is brought up, and I think it's going to be, I expect that we'll be seeing legislation in surrounding states fairly soon, or moving forward with stopgap measures like we've done now with the surcharge. But I just wanted to make it known that DES is highly supportive of this.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do hear that there are privacy concerns about assessing payment based on vehicle miles traveled. But just the number of miles traveled doesn't necessarily say where you've traveled. So could the department comment on the privacy issue?
That's not really our area of expertise. I've certainly heard that before, and I guess I always think of anybody that's driving on a toll road. They're getting their license plate number grabbed as they drive through. So I'm not sure what the what the answer is to the individuals that are concerned about their privacy. But I would think that just knowing how many miles somebody's traveled in a year doesn't give away any indication as to where they traveled. That is going to be one of the challenges. I mean, obviously, we get a lot of income right now on tolls from out-of-state vehicles. A lot of New Hampshire residents are doing a lot of their miles outside of New Hampshire. So it's going to be an interesting challenge to see how that gets sort of resolved throughout the region, and whether we need to be looking at a model like the trucking industry does, where the fees on them are allocated throughout the regions. But
That's such an interesting point you raise. Do other states that maybe do assess payment based on vehicle miles traveled figure out a way to know whether those miles were in state? We don't know that now with the gas tax. I mean, we get the tax in New Hampshire, but that car might immediately go to another state. So how are other states handling it, if they are?
I'm not aware of any that have gone to a mileage-based fee yet. But there could well be some. I'm just not aware of them.
I can answer some of your question, because my norm major, my first term in the House, this was the first bill I ever spoke on, not the commission, but assessing a fee. First time I ever went to the well was on a bill relative to this topic. And I know like Oregon tried a GPS model, which quickly failed. Other states have used vehicle either registration or vehicle inspection, because you log the miles into every year you get an inspection, so you can put the miles in. But the argument then starts stemming around the weight of the vehicle, right? Because obviously the heavier the vehicle, the more damage is done to the road. So those vehicles get charged more for the miles they drive. The argument of how many miles are in the state of New Hampshire, there was a lot more that also started rumbling in, like, how do you allocate this? And then the whole argument is that registration fees based on any of that puts the onus on New Hampshire citizens versus our tourism industry, which puts it off a lot of pain on our system as well. So that the commission's got its work cut out for it.
Yes,
Given all
yes.
those factors, so.
Yes. I will also offer that, we have some federal funding that we are working to install electric vehicle charging infrastructure around. Obviously, right now, there is no equivalent of gas tax that's assessed for EV charging. And most people do their charging at home. I own an EV, and I think last time I looked, 97% of my charging was just done out of my garage. So it's going to be an interesting transition.
I think I don't know if you know, Ms. Representative McConkey, but I think ST&E last year had a bill relative to public charging stations and trying to put the equivalent of a gas tax on public charging stations. And my understanding that went nowhere too. So they were trying to, again, make the equivalent of a gas tax for someone from Massachusetts that drives to Loon Mountain to ski and needs to plug their car in. Yeah, we get some sort of tax, but I do know there's been some efforts in that direction. But again, I think that's something the commission will take up to deal with how they deal with that. So, anything else? Seeing nothing.
Hopefully it'll be the four members in the House.
With that, I'll close the public hearing on 1631. Is there anything else we need to discuss? I think I talked to you guys already about next week. We are going to meet 9:30. We're going to put the 5 remaining House bills that we currently have on the docket for public hearings. And then we'll figure out when we want to do an exec session and whether or not anything else is coming over from the House. But as of last night, with the last batch we got assigned to us, we have 5 remaining House bills that need public hearings. So, good. Everybody okay with next week? I know. To clean this. To 4. Yep. We can do that as a simple committee amendment. It's just you know, I don't know if you have to go through a drafting or draft it afterwards. That's a simple change that I think we can just make on the fly.
I think about a capital budget person. Not the Senate.
All right, and with that, we are adjourned.